guys, and welcome to my channel. So today I'm sharing with you 3 relatively easy Halloween DIYs. There are a couple little things in the door hanger and the jack-o'-lantern that are sort of tricky, but other than that, these are relatively easy to make. I'm starting with the clay pots that look like monsters. I have seen these everywhere. I've seen them all over Pinterest. I've seen them at craft shows, pretty much everywhere. But they're always like $30, $40, $50 to buy them, and I'm not doing that. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to see if I can make these at home for relatively cheap. And I did get lucky because I found the Terra Cotta pots at Michael's, 10 for $9.99. And I don't add, and when I'm talking about cost, I don't usually add in the cost for the paint and the paint brushes and all that because I already had it. So this one was probably the cheapest one to make. And I had 5 designs in mind, so I managed to get 2 of each monster because I had 10 pots. My only thing was my paint did not want to cover. I had to do a double coat on every single one of these. Well, no, I don't think I did a double coat on the black, but I did a double coat on everything else. But after I let these dry, all I did was go in with my paint markers that I have and draw the little details on, well, at least draw the little details that I could on. Like the jack-o'-lantern, I drew the face. The ghost, I drew the face. I drew part of Frankenstein, the cat, and the vampire as well. But then in those, I also went over with some of my actual paint, because sometimes the paint markers don't work as well, and you can see the base color through the paint marker. And that's not what I wanted. And I like these because you can have so much fun with these. I think these were probably my favorites out of all 3 that I did. Even though I really do love my pickle jar jack-o'-lantern, which I think that's the one you'll see next. But I'm just going to play some music and you can watch me go through and draw the faces on each of these. Okay, so for the cat one, this is completely optional, but I had black cardstock, and I just cut out some triangles and hot glued them to the Terra Cotta pot, so my cat had ears. You don't have to do this, but I thought it was cute, even though it may have been a little bit extra. You don't have to do this because it looks like a cat without it, but it looks like a cat more with the cardstock ears. Okay, so the next thing I'm getting started on is my pickle jar jack-o'-lantern. I just started by painting the pickle jar orange. I ended up having to do 2 or 3 coats on this because my orange paint just did not want to cover. And I think painting clear glass does have something to do with that. Or it may have just been my paint. I don't know. But I had the same problem with my scarecrow that I did in my fall DIYs video. And yeah, excuse my faces, because when I focus, I make some really strange faces. Or I'll have my tongue sticking out. So, yeah. Please excuse that. But I did paint this, then end up going through with a second and third coat, and I also painted the lid black. That's completely optional, given in this case you're not going to see the lid, but I did want to paint it. That way, in case that my plan didn't work out with the witch hat that I made, that it wasn't just a solid, it just wasn't a green lid anymore. Okay, so now that the paint has dried and I've done 3 coats, I went through with my paint markers again and drew the jack-o'-lantern face. And in this case, I drew the jack-o'-lantern face on it, but I went through with regular black paint and just painted where I had colored in, or where I'd done the outline. And I did that way I wouldn't have to waste so much of my paint marker. And I've noticed that if I actually color with my paint marker on this paint when it's on glass, that the base coat of paint comes off onto the paint marker. But it only does that when it's on glass. I don't know. So, but other than that, I love the paint markers, and these turn out really cute. Okay, so the final step for this is to create a witch hat. Now, of course, there's always the option to just buy a witch hat and glue it to the top of the pickle jar. But I bought black felt, measured it out a little bit, not really measured. I just kind of wrapped it around and went, okay, so this is how big I need it, so this is how I'm gonna cut it. That kind of measure, and it worked out really, really well. But I measured it out, I cut it, and then I wrapped it around again, and this is when I actually went through and glued the hat together. I am not gluing the hat to the pickle jar just yet. I wanted to make my hat first before I actually glued it to the pickle jar, just in case it didn't work. And if I can find tutorials for these, I will link them. Honestly, I don't think there are tutorials for these. This is just something I saw on Pinterest and thought, okay, I could do that. That looks cute. And we have these random gigantic pickle jars laying around my house for basically no reason at all. Except for we buy the pickle jars and then eat the pickles, or occasionally my brother will keep the juice. And I think that's how we started collecting the giant pickle jars. My brother started soaking or brining chicken in the pickle juice after we'd eaten the pickles, and you need a giant pickle jar to do that. But I did After I finished my hat, I let it dry. Then I went through, pulled it off, and put some glue around the hat. Put some hot glue around the rim of the hat, rim of the jar, and on top of the lid, and I glued it down that way. Then I also did, I did make a brim for the hat, and you will see where I was cutting little details on the top of the hat. I did that because the picture I was looking at and my inspiration had it like that, and I thought it was cute. Honestly, when it comes to this stuff, you can just do whatever you want. And that's kind of why I like things like this, because it gives me free reign on how I want to decorate it, what I want it to look like, and I don't have to make it look exactly like something that I saw on Pinterest or something I saw at a craft store or at a craft show. So yeah, I also went through with some, I think it's called raffia, and went around the brim of the hat so it had like a I don't even know what it's called. You'll see it. Like it had like a belt around it, and then I also did one on the top of the hat so it was more of a point. Okay, so the final thing I made was the Boo door sign, and I bought wood letters, I believe from Amazon, and I painted them black and put orange polka dots on them, but I cannot find the clip where I painted those. It's very possible that I didn't even film that and I thought I was filming. I do that occasionally, but I do have footage of me painting the little ghost that I have white. So yeah, that's how that starts. You just paint everything. And you can paint the letters however you want. I went based off of something I saw on Pinterest. But you don't have to do that. The next thing is you need some wired burlap. This is 1.5 inches thick, or 1.5 inches wide. And I measured it out. I knew my letters were 5 inches tall. So I knew I needed at least 15 inches. So I measured out to 30 inches. And I left about 10 inches on the top. And that I hadn't done anything yet. You will see what I do with that. But first thing I wanted to do was attach the letters. Then after I had attached all the letters to the burlap and I knew it was going to stick and not fall off, I flipped the top part of the burlap and made a loop and glued that down to the back of the B. That's also when I cut the burlap from the loop or from the spool, because I had measured it out, but I hadn't cut it off yet just in case I needed more. And after I had everything hot glued and I knew it was going to stick, that's when I attached the ghost. This one's not hard to do. It's just really time consuming and you've got to be really careful because it's a lot of glue and you can burn yourself really easy. I think I only burned myself 2 or 3 times doing this, which amazed me. And I definitely recommend working with a silicone mat like I'm doing. That way the hot glue doesn't stick to your surface, and if it does stick to the surface, you can easily run something under it and wipe it off or pull it off. But after I got my loop, I did it off camera. I found a tutorial and I created a double loop bow. I had to find a tutorial for that, so if I remember, I will link the tutorial on how I did that. And then I glued it to the burlap ribbon. And then I wrapped a piece of ghost ribbon around the center of that. Or no. Okay, yeah, I made the bow, wrapped some ghost ribbon around the center of that bow, then I glued it to the burlap, and then I cut it to however I wanted it. I also took a regular piece of black ribbon and hung it through the loop of this. That way it would hang from the door and I wouldn't have to worry about how it would hang later. But that's what it looked like when it was done. So that's going to be it for this Halloween DIYs video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Hit the red subscribe button. Other than that,